He once compared what was being done to Meghan to what was done to Diana. Those were not the words of a tabloid commentator. They were not the words of a paid spokesperson. They were the words of George Clooney. And he said them in front of cameras at a moment he chose deliberately. 6 years later, by every observable measure, that same man is no longer in the picture. No joint appearances, no public defense, no comment during the Oprah interview, no comment during the Netflix series, no comment during Spare. The loudest man stayed quiet. And for Harry, that silence may be the part that lands hardest. He once had the most powerful celebrity defender in the world. Because George Clooney does not go quiet about things he believes in. He has built a 30-year career being the opposite of quiet, which means his silence when it arrives is not background noise. His silence carries his signature. This is not just a story about one friendship ending. Friendships end all the time in Hollywood, and most end without comment from anyone. This story matters for a different reason. George Clooney was not a casual acquaintance who showed up to the wedding. He was the celebrity who chose to put his reputation on the line in 2019. The cost of doing so was high. The benefit was unclear. He took the position that what was being done to Meghan paralleled what was done to Diana. That is not a position a man takes casually. It carries weight when said in front of cameras. So when the same man, 6 years later, has stopped showing up, the question changes. He stopped defending. He stopped being available for the public events that would naturally include him. The question is no longer whether a friendship faded. The question is what he learned in those 6 years that the rest of us did not see. The wider question is what his absence tells us about the social shape Harry and Meghan thought they were building in California. They moved there expecting Hollywood to welcome them as peers. 6 years on, the wedding guest list looks one way. The current social map looks another. And the gap between those two pictures is what tonight is about. Tonight, we are going through the full Clooney picture, how the friendship looked at its peak, and what the 2019 defense of Meghan actually cost. What the Lake Como visit signaled, and what changed after California. The 2023 King's Trust appearance and why royal commentators read it the way they did. The wider pattern of other wedding guests who have similarly stopped generating public connection. And the question that sits underneath all of it. When the loudest defender goes quiet, what is he saying that he chose not to put into words? Let's start with who George Clooney is, because that context matters. He has spent 3 decades in public life being the opposite of subtle. He is politically vocal. He has campaigned for press freedom. He has campaigned against the violence in Darfur. He has called out political corruption in front of cameras when most of his peers managed their risk more carefully. He has stood beside Amal Clooney, an international human rights lawyer. She works on war crimes cases and journalist protections at the highest levels. The Clooneys are not simply famous, they are famous and credible. That combination is rare. Very few couples sustain it over time. He is the kind of public figure who picks his moments and means them when he picks them. That is the social capital he brought to St. George's Chapel in May of 2018. The wedding guest list that day was extraordinary. The Clooneys were on it. So were the Beckhams. Idris Elba, DJ Ed the reception. Serena Williams gave a speech at the celebration afterward. Oprah was there. The density of famous names communicated something specific. The Sussexes had arrived, not at the level of celebrity proximity, at the level of the global elite. Months after the wedding, Harry and Meghan were reportedly invited to George Clooney's villa on Lake Como. That villa is not a place celebrities go to be photographed. It is a place people go when they want to be genuinely out of the public eye. An invitation there meant something. It meant the friendship had moved past the prestige of the occasion. Then came 2019. Meghan was pregnant. The press coverage of her was intensifying. And George Clooney chose to speak. He used the word Diana. He drew the parallel between what the press had done before and what it appeared to be doing again. He did not hedge. He did not soften the comparison. That was not a casual celebrity endorsement. That was a man putting his reputation on the line. And the fact that he chose Diana as the comparison is what makes that moment land with the weight it does. Now, let's talk about what that 2019 moment actually cost him, because it cost him something specific. When George Clooney compared the press coverage of Meghan to the press coverage that preceded Diana's death, he was not making a small claim. He was attaching his name to one of the most serious comparisons available in British public life. The British tabloid press did not let it pass quietly. He took a professional risk that has real consequences in the rooms where his career operates. He did it anyway. That was the moment that should have shown beyond any doubt that the friendship was durable, that it was real, that it was not the kind of relationship that fades when conditions change. Now we move forward. 2020. Harry and Meghan relocate to California. The Clooneys are reportedly a few hours up the coast. Geography is no longer the obstacle. The friendship should be deepening. The public signals should be increasing. What happened is the opposite. The public signals decreased, then they stopped. No joint appearances, no photographs together in any public setting. No major events attended as couples. No mutual social media acknowledgement of the kind celebrities use to signal an ongoing relationship. By every observable measure, none of that material exists for the Clooney-Sussex relationship in the period after 2020. Then came 2021, the Oprah interview, the most significant celebrity media moment of the Sussex post-royal chapter. Allegations of racism, allegations of denied protection. The interview generated cycles of coverage that pulled every public defender of the Sussexes into the conversation. Reporters knocked on doors, producers chased statements. The press waited specifically for the people who had previously defended Meghan to speak again. George Clooney said nothing, not in the immediate aftermath, not in the weeks that followed, not in the months that followed. The man who had publicly compared the treatment of Meghan to the treatment of Diana said nothing. The man who had drawn that parallel in front of cameras said nothing. The man who had absorbed the professional cost of doing so said nothing. Tom Bower has tracked the Sussex story across multiple books. He has repeatedly noted a specific pattern. High-status celebrity allies have declined to engage publicly with Sussex projects after the Oprah cycle. The Clooneys are one of the most prominent examples of that pattern. Then came 2022, the Netflix documentary. 6 episodes, global rollout, significant content addressing the institution of the royal family directly, more coverage cycles. Again, no Clooney comment. Again, no Clooney defense. Again, the man who had once been the most public defender said nothing public. Then came 2023, Spare. Harry's memoir generated one of the largest global publishing events of the decade. The book made specific claims about specific named family members. It described private conversations. It placed people in scenes. The coverage cycle lasted months. The Clooneys made no comment. Not in support, not in qualification, not at all. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of forensic read. That pattern of silence is the actual document of this story. Not the absence of joint photographs. The actual document is the absence of his voice during 3 specific moments. 3 moments where his earlier position would logically have required him to speak again. Because here is the thing about George Clooney that you cannot get around. He does not run out of words. He has been speaking publicly on issues he cares about for decades. He spoke on Darfur. He spoke on press freedom. He spoke on political corruption. He spoke on Brexit. He spoke on American elections. He spoke on the treatment of Meghan in 2019. He chose silence on every Sussex controversy that followed. George Clooney does not run out of words. He ran out of reasons to use them on this particular story. Now, let's bring this back to 2023 because something specific happened that year that has not been read carefully enough. In May, George and Amal Clooney attended the King's Trust Awards in New York. This was a prestigious event directly connected to King Charles's charitable work. Not a Sussex event, not a premiere of anything connected to Harry and Meghan, a King's Trust event. The same year Spare had landed in shops. The same year Harry was publicly characterizing the institution of the royal family as one that had failed and harmed him. The Clooneys made no statement about the Sussexes in connection with that appearance. They did not have to. They simply attended an event they presumably found worthwhile. They shook hands with people they knew. They went about their lives. Royal commentators read the symbolism without needing the Clooneys to spell it out. While Harry was publicly characterizing the family as the institution that had wounded him, one of the celebrity couples he had reportedly considered a close friend was attending a flagship event tied to his father, the king. The contrast was not subtle. Paula Furlick covers this beat with good sourcing and no obvious axe to grind. She has described a broader pattern. High-status celebrity figures keep themselves close enough to the Sussex story to stay informed, and far enough away to avoid being pulled into the fallout. The Clooneys are a clean case of that pattern. Richard Eden has tracked the same drift across multiple columns. The reading is consistent across commentators with no shared incentive to coordinate. Subscribe to Palace Insider and drop your honest read in the comments. Was the King's Trust attendance a deliberate signal, or was it just a worthwhile event the Clooneys happened to attend? Both readings are defensible. Both readings tell you something. And the Clooneys are not the only case. The wedding guest list from 2018 is now a kind of historical document because comparing it to the current social map gives you the picture nobody wanted to admit was happening. David Beckham's name now appears more often in coverage connected to King Charles, William, and Catherine, less often in coverage connected to Harry and Meghan. Reports of friction around the Invictus Games have circulated persistently enough to become part of the accepted record. Idris Elba's public charitable connections continue to appear in the orbit of royal-adjacent institutions. His public connection to the Sussexes has gone quiet. Serena Williams, once described as Meghan's most genuine celebrity friendship, has gone noticeably quiet in the most recent chapter. Oprah, who was the most consequential celebrity association of the Sussex post-royal period, did not select Meghan's children's book for her book club. She has not attached herself to any significant Sussex project since. The loudest man stayed quiet. So did most of the others. The pattern across these cases is not one coordinated decision. It is the slow, observable, individually explainable withdrawal of nearly every major celebrity who once defined the Sussex social orbit. Each individual withdrawal is explainable on its own terms. The accumulation is what creates the picture, and the picture is the document the marketing campaign cannot rewrite. Now let's zoom out, because the Clooney story is one specific data point in a much bigger picture. What it actually shows is the shape of the Hollywood map Harry and Meghan thought they were walking into. They moved to Montecito in 2020. The assumption on its face was reasonable. Hollywood is full of people who understand public scrutiny. It is full of people with the resources to maintain connections across complicated terrain. It looked like a world that would welcome the Sussexes on their own terms. What that assumption may not have fully accounted for is how Hollywood relationships actually work. The Clooneys are not simply celebrities who happen to be famous. They are people with a carefully managed global presence, active institutional relationships with the kind of organizations that matter to them, a strong incentive to be precise about where their public name is pointing. Brands like that do not reorganize themselves around a newcomer's arrival. They protect what they have built. Tom Sykes at the Daily Beast has written across multiple pieces about the specific economy of celebrity proximity to the Sussexes. His read is consistent. The high-prestige figures in particular have become careful. The cost-benefit analysis has shifted across the post-royal years. What was once an interesting association has become, by every observable signal, an association most A-list figures are choosing to keep at a measured distance. Alison Boshoff has tracked the same drift across her own reporting. The picture across commentators is convergent. Not because they are coordinating, because the underlying pattern is visible to anyone watching closely. Hollywood did not move to Montecito. The Sussexes moved to Hollywood, and in Hollywood, the people who set the social terms were already there before you arrived. They decide who gets invited to which event. They control the symbolic capital of any given room. They will still be there after you leave. The Clooneys were one of those people. By every available signal, they appear to have made their decision about where their name should be visible, and that decision is not visibly attached to Montecito. To be fair, the counter-argument here has real merit, and a careful viewer should hear it before settling on a verdict. The honest reading on the other side is this: celebrity friendships fade all the time. They fade for ordinary reasons. People get busy, schedules diverge, geographic proximity does not translate into actual social time. The Clooneys have children now, so do the Sussexes. Lives get smaller and more private when small children are in them. Maybe the friendship simply ran its natural course, in the way most adult friendships eventually do. That reading has merit because every individual piece of evidence in the silence pattern can be explained on those terms. The Oprah interview was a specific commercial product. The Clooneys may have privately viewed it as a project, not as a defense that required public solidarity. The Netflix series was the same. Spare was a memoir, and many readers, including people who genuinely care about Harry, have privately had complicated reactions to it. Maybe the Clooneys were among them. Maybe their silence is not a verdict. Maybe it is privacy. The reason that reading does not fully hold is the King's Trust appearance. Friendships that fade naturally do not, as a rule, work this way. One party does not publicly turn up at an event tied to an institution. Not when the other party is publicly accusing that institution of harm. That is a different category of signal. And then there is the wider pattern. Every other named guest from the 2018 wedding has made similar choices. The natural fade reading cannot fully account for that. Individual fades are normal. The pattern across nearly every major name is not. Now let's return to where we started, because this is where the picture lands with its full weight. There is a man who has spent 3 decades being the opposite of subtle. He has spoken on Darfur. He has spoken on press freedom. He has spoken on political corruption. He has spoken on elections. He has spoken on causes most of his peers have managed their risk away from. He has stood in front of cameras and used his name in ways that cost him real things. In 2019, he stood in front of cameras again. He said what was being done to Meghan was what had been done to Diana. He picked the most serious comparison available to him in British public life. He attached his name to it, he absorbed the cost, and then the next chapter arrived, and the next, and the next. The same man, when the same defense would logically have been required, said nothing. Not a soft statement of support, not a careful caveat. Not a single line of comment offered to a single outlet through any of the major Sussex chapters of the past 5 years. The loudest man stayed quiet. That is the document. That is the receipt. And it is sitting in plain view, available to anyone who looks. The friendship that began at St. George's Chapel in 2018 did not end with a public statement. It ended with the slow, observable withdrawal of the very voice that had once been its loudest defender. And that withdrawal lands harder than any photograph that was never taken. Harder than any event that was never attended. Harder than any party that was never reciprocated. It lands hardest for Harry. Because George Clooney does not run out of words. He ran out of reasons to use them on this particular story. His silence carries his signature. So here is the question for you. Did George Clooney make a deliberate, calculated decision to step away from the Sussexes once the Spare chapter made the cost of association too high? Or did the friendship simply run its natural course in a compressed period of extraordinary public pressure the way many adult friendships eventually do? Both readings have real evidence behind them. Both readings tell you something about the post-royal chapter that the official Sussex marketing has worked hard not to acknowledge. Drop your honest read in the comments below. We genuinely read them, and the debate on this topic always sharpens the picture. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next. A like genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of forensic read. See you in the next one.